Um, the Bechtel Corporation, which is sometimes called a part of the shadow government because it plays such a huge role in the working of the military-industrial espionage complex.
And they built half of Saudi Arabia, didn't they?
They did a lot, and all over the world. Bechtel has operations that are global in scope, but they're certainly very active in the United States as well. But they do quite a lot of work for the American government, and a lot of it is black budget type of operations. Well, they went into Saudi Arabia in the 1980s and built a series of 5 very deeply buried, very technologically sophisticated underground bases out in the desert in preparation for the Gulf War. People need to understand that wars don't just happen. They are arranged and planned many years in advance. Among other things, wars are big business for the Fortune 500 corporations. They make billions and even trillions of dollars off of warfare. And so for them, to lay the groundwork for a major war is a business undertaking. It's just business for them, the business of industrial slaughter, otherwise known as war. And they're very cynical and cold about it. Now, they will trot out propaganda for the public about liberty and freedom and democracy and so forth. The bottom line is war is big business, and that's what you need to understand first and foremost. And so Bechtel got huge contracts to go in and build those huge underground facilities in Saudi Arabia. I could document 5 from the open literature. And in fact, Stormy Norman Schwarzkopf, who was blustering all over TV and radio during the conduct of that war, did his fighting from deep underground. It's easy to be brave when you're a couple thousand feet underground, George.
Yeah, it is not. And I was going to ask you, how big and how deep? A couple thousand feet?
Oh, easily. I don't know exactly how deep those particular facilities are. I just know that they're deep. My guess would be at least several hundred feet, if not a couple thousand feet. Now, what I do know and have been told explicitly, and have also documented from the literature that I've seen, is that it's child's play to make a base, a large base, 1 mile underground. That's state of the art, has been for decades, really.
That is just amazing. And I bet they go in almost with a slant type of drilling. You know,
well, there are different ways to do it.
Yeah.
You can go in, and I've seen schematic diagrams of various ways of doing it in the military and civil engineering literature and other government documents that I've looked at. You can access facilities by vertical shafts, and they can be quite deep. I mean, even in the open mining literature, they can make vertical shafts 2 miles deep, George.
You know, Richard, they've got underground tunnels, for example, underwater, so they can do incredible things. Let's talk more about that, and maybe you can describe what they look like inside. More with Richard Sauder on Coast to Coast AM. So, Richard, let's go back and talk about what they may look like, these facilities, and your thoughts again on how they construct them.
Well, what they look like depends on the function. Some of them can be quite large. I've been told that some of them are actually vast. And speaking with one specialist about the Monsanto complex in New Mexico, I asked about the dimensions of it, and the response was vast. I also was told about it by a woman who wrote to me and was a recipient of a deathbed confession from her elderly father, who had gone away from the family for some period of time when she was younger. All they knew was that he was working on a construction job in New Mexico, and not until he was about to die did he tell her that he had helped to build what he called an underground city, not a base, not a facility, but an actual city underground in New Mexico. And this was back in the 1950s. So they can be quite large. And actually some of the technology he described to her that they installed already back in the 1950s would be technology that even today many people would not have in their homes. So you have to understand that in the black world, there's technology that would be in these facilities that would be quite a lot different from what you would know from your everyday life. So not only can they be, the dimensions can be quite large inside. There can be cavernous chambers. But also the technology with which these things are equipped and outfitted is, really a technical quantum leap beyond what we have to use in our everyday lives. It's been held back from us, in other words. We're paying for it. It's being built with our money, but without our knowledge, and we don't have access to these things. We really have at least a two-tier society. We have what's going on in the black world, vastly funded, very technologically sophisticated, and then we have what's happening in our world, so to speak, which is much less well-funded and which is not nearly so technologically sophisticated. In fact, the infrastructure that we're dealing with is in a state of decline.
Yeah, I can believe that. And
well, I can see it. As you drive around and you look at what's happening, you can see crumbling bridges and streets, you see a rickety rail system, you see an electrical grid that is struggling to meet with supply-demand,
sure,
and on and on. Meanwhile, we have literally trillions of dollars being sucked out of the budget for stimulus bills, bailout bills. We had the spectacle of the Federal Reserve's chief financial officer testifying before Congress and being questioned by Representative Alan Grayson from Florida, and she had the cheek to tell him she could not account for the disposition of something on the order of $2 trillion, which ostensibly fall under her purview. So we're being mugged, George.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not a small mug. It's not like being held up at gunpoint and someone lists $100. We're being mugged by the trillions of dollars, and each individual is actually having thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars stolen from him and from her.
Now, beyond the bases for military purposes, to be able to control command and control, I can understand that. What are they using these facilities for? What are they expecting?
Well, you see, that's the question, and that's what really bothers me and other researchers, too, the great secrecy that surrounds so much of this. One of the things we know, for example, the NSA has vast acres and acres and acres of supercomputers underground, which they use for surveillance purposes. Now, I mean Big Brother, George Orwell-style surveillance purposes. I object to that. I don't think that has any role in a free society. It does in dictatorship, but not in a free society. So that alone is an indication that we are now living under dictatorship, technocratic dictatorship. That's one example of some of the things that go on underground. Another example might be secretive biological engineering and genetic engineering. There are a fair number of anecdotal accounts of this kind of thing happening underground, and that again is troubling, because if the human genome is being tinkered with, if there's secret human cloning research going on underground, if there is secret bacteriological warfare research going on underground, frankly, that's our business. It's our planet, and it's our welfare that is at stake and at question, and we absolutely deserve to know about it, the more so since we're paying for it. That's another example. Then there are many stories, of course, of underground facilities, and also some stories of undersea facilities with an alien presence. And by the way, the aliens need not always be non-human. Evidently, some of them are very human. And it would appear that one of the big secrets behind the ET and UFO cover-up is that, oh, by the way, not all of the ETs are non-human. Some of them are fully human, and it would appear that one of the big aspects of the cover-up is that the Earth may not be the only planet in the galaxy with a resident human population.
That's an incredible story.
Yes, and it's a story that I think a fair number of researchers are beginning to suspect is the truth. I'm one of them. Now, there are other things that have come my way. I've been told that some of these facilities can be secret mining facilities. Imagine if you have your own secret gold mine or uranium mine or platinum mine, and you were able to mine this and have your own stash of precious metals. That could be very valuable, especially if you are a government agency and you can move this on the black market to raise funding for other clandestine operations.
Sounds like somebody's being King Solomon all over again, huh?
Yeah, it could be. I'll give you one for instance of that I was related to me anecdotally, and that was during the construction of the facility, the so-called Monsanto underground base in New Mexico. I was told that, of course, there are veins of gold in the Rocky Mountains in general, and certainly in the mountains in New Mexico. And during the construction of this base, from time to time, the miners ran across veins of gold. In some cases, they were pretty good veins of gold. The ore was of a very high quality, and the generals that were running the project confiscated that gold for their own and self-enrichment. So that's one example. That was then a twofer. At one and the same time, they made a base that at that time was pretty secret. Not so much today, but at that time, yes. But in the process of building the base, they were also running their own clandestine gold mining operation.
Richard, do you think these mines, once they're built, are manned and there's a whole bunch of people down in each one of them? Or do they kind of leave until they have to go back down there and use it?
No, a lot of these would have a resident workforce, around the clock. Many of them are fully staffed all the time. It's hard to know just how many because there's such a high degree of compartmentalization. The agencies involved, whether they're government organizations or non-governmental, are in the main very secretive. I would go further and say extremely secretive about what they're doing underground. There's another issue I want to mention, and that is, for years we've had a tremendous problem in the society of missing persons.
Yes.
I mean, a very large number of missing persons.
Thousands and thousands every year.
It's just a vast number. And you can account for a certain number of them in terms of runaway children, husbands who are nagged one too many times and hit the road, etc. But beyond that, you're left with a large number of people that simply cannot be accounted for at the end of each year. Nationwide, it's quite large. I think it actually runs over 100,000 people a year who just fall through the cracks and vanish. Where do they go? What happens to them? I am beginning to wonder if some of them may not be taken underground as guinea pigs or forced labor, source of forced labor, or for other reasons. I think you've had Melinda Leslie on the program a time or two or more, and she certainly has talked to a number of people who've been abducted by the United States military. So there's a growing body of anecdotal evidence that points to the United States military running its own clandestine human abduction program for very obscure purposes. But part of this does entail taking people underground to these very bizarre underground facilities where the military is doing, frankly, weird things. And there are also, in some cases, aliens down there. Now, of course, we hear these stories from the ones who are abducted and come back, who live to tell the tale. What about the ones who may be abducted and don't return?